WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Communications Channel 16 proudly present the We Should Know Show, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative. Now, here's your host, J.W. Simmons, as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.W. Simmons here. I'm your host. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're coming to you from Star Communications TV Channel 16, simulcast on WCLN Radio. We've got a very special show today about safety 2025 in the summer of 2025. So folks we have with us today is well aware of a lot of safety issues in the community. I want to start with Jamaal Faison. Jamaal, thank you for being here. You are the Animal Control Officer, I think is your title.
Yes, for
the city of Clinton. You also have a private business. I'm going to mention that going on, give you a little free ad here. But in that position, we're going to be talking about a lot of things that you see that folks need to understand kind of escalates during the summer. Next to you is somebody that I've known for a while. She probably hasn't known that I've known her for a while. But Gabriela, thank you for being here. Gabriela Tew, she's with the county. And as I read through a lot of the things you do with the county as a paramedic, and a lot of the things that you're aspiring to do in your graduate program, you carry a lot of weight with the county and expertise as it relates to medical care and medical response because you are the training officer and have oversight of that whole operation for this county. And thank you very much for taking time to be here. Anthony Davis. Chief, you've been here long enough. We were talking off camera a while ago, and I really could just kind of give you this and I could go for there. You've been on the show a number of times. I appreciate you for doing that. But presently, if folks don't understand this, you are now Director of Public Safety for the city of Clinton, which gives you oversight. And his weight is kind of heavy too, Gabriela, but that gives him oversight of everything related to public safety, which is a huge responsibility. So when I look at you three folks sitting here and I'm having this conversation, I don't know of anybody better qualified to say to folks, remember this, or don't do this, or consider this during the summer of 2025. So Jamaal, I'm going to start with you. One of the things that strikes me with animal control is that we have more people out, as a whole. You see, obviously, people having outside cookouts. You have people doing all kinds of things outside. I mean, the key word, if I had to say it for summer 2025, is outside, looking for that sunshine, that nice evening, and you sit down and you're outside in your yard. Along with that is the animals. And sometimes animals now seems to be escalated more like children to people than children have been. Sure. So I want you to talk about what do you see and what are some of the things that you want folks to understand? Because you're the person that answers those calls.
Right.
If that call comes in to emergency services inside the city of Clinton somewhere, you're going to roll up. Most likely, you're the officer on the scene. It's not going to be Anthony. It's going to be you. So just tell us some of the things you want folks to know 2025.
Okay. Well, we know in the summertime, the temperatures they can go. Well, it's North Carolina. We can have winter on Monday, summer on Tuesday. So, and during those extremely hot days, I try to educate people. Like, if you don't have to bring your dog out, don't bring your dog out. Or if you can't leave that car running the whole entire time, because a lot of people think if you crack a window, that dog is going to be okay. But if it's 90 degrees outside, inside of your car is going to be at least 120, somewhere around that range. So we get a lot of calls in the summertime with dogs left in cars. So we have to extract those dogs out. It's people, a lot of people think, I'll just crack my window. So, but that's not the case. That dog needs air, like straight air conditioning through the summertime. Another thing that I see is animal bites increase in the summer. So, you have your cookouts, you have your people visiting for the summertime, just make sure that canine is vaccinated. There's some stuff that you just cannot help. And sometimes, that dog, that you might get that 1 or 2 year old kid that's interested in that dog, and they might not be terrorizing the dog, but that dog has a low tolerance. So you might get a snip or something, but we spend a lot of our time at handling calls at Sampson Regional or Clinton Medical. So I just want people to be vigilant when it comes to bringing their dogs around other people's kids and stuff like that.
Gabby, I want to segue to you on that, because I know oftentimes it's what he's talking about. You guys are responding. You and the folks that you train and have oversight respond to all kinds of events. And I was reading something where emergency medical responders, that folks needed to make sure that if they have animals in the home, and we'll talk about some of the exotics a little bit later, Jamaal, but if they have animals in the home, they need to be aware that if paramedics roll up and come in that house, that safety issue is critical for your folks as well, is it not?
Yes.
Every time.
And that's why dispatch tells them to secure your animals, because the paramedics are coming into their home, so they're just going to be defensive. And if the paramedics feel unsafe, they'll leave. Well, not leave, but go back to their vehicles until the animals can be secure. Because we've ran into that a lot. Like they'll have their Rottweilers or, whatever in the front yard. Yeah. And they're in the house, wondering why we're not coming in, but you need to secure your animals because we're in their territory type thing. Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Anthony, moving to you and talking about summertime, one of the things that also, and I just like to read, but I was reading a recent article. This is like kind of current news, is more motorcycles are out, more mopeds are out. And guess what? I saw somebody just yesterday, and I thought, man, that bicycle is cool. I want a bicycle that moves like that. And they were pedaling the bicycle. But when I got closer, I looked, and it was an electric bicycle. No helmet, no nothing, but it was scooting down the road. When you look at that from just a safety issue as the Director of Public Safety, and I'm just tossing that one here to you. What are your thoughts? And does people need to become more aware and alert of those kinds of vehicular transportation?
Yes, especially with I say we're in a distracted age of driving right now with cell phones and all the distractions we have in our vehicles. We see it every day. So obviously if you're on that electric bike or unprotected, then you do have to worry about the other person on the roadway. We do a lot of educational events dealing with bikes, electric bikes, the laws pertaining to those, whether it's a city ordinance or state law. City ordinance is you should have a helmet on and flow with traffic, not against it. So just getting out, educating people what the laws are and how we should be going up down the roadway with those types of vehicles.
When you look at, and again, I know you've got oversight of both fire, anything public safety inside the city. When you look at that, what are some of the things that you're seeing? And I obviously look at it from a senior side, should I say? Is there precautions and concerns that you have sometimes when you see people out, and I know your officers are very community oriented. Are they telling you we need to maybe get more concerned with a certain community and what may be happening to people? I mean, there's folks maybe it's on the golf course that don't need to be on the golf course when it's 100 degrees and the index is 115,
Yeah, so again, I like going back to the education piece, because if you don't educate them on what the laws or what our community expects, then they don't know. So if the officers are out and they see that going on, then obviously they may get out and just speak to them and say, hey, this is what you need to be doing. This is what you shouldn't be doing. What we do see, like you said, in the heat of the summer is a lot of heat exposures. Even if you're in a swimming pool, you still can come exhausted to heat if you're not, drinking fluids and that type of thing. We do see a lot of that. But going back to what Animal Control Faison said earlier, especially at Sampson Crossing, we get a lot of calls pertaining to either animals or children left inside vehicles in the summertime. Mm-hmm. And like he said, even with the window crack, we have a display we put out there sometimes that shows the temperature inside the car related to the temperature outside. And it could be 30 to 40 degrees higher inside the vehicle than outside the vehicle. And if we're called, we're going to deal with it, whether that's a forced entry or making forced entry into that vehicle to get that animal or that person out to safety.
And one of the things I want to kind of move to as well is our capability and capacity here for emergency responders. And when I look at what you do, you also have oversight of the clinician kind of part when that person that you're bringing in and goes into where there's the doctor and those kinds of things. When I look at that, how has, and this may be something because we're going to take a break here shortly, but how has the landscape changed for you in a sense of training folks for that response, with the accent now being more helicopter pads in the county, more ability to get folks out of here into specialty care, either at Wake or East Carolina or even Cape Fear? Has that changed the dynamic of how you look at a patient and where do we take this patient?
So our treatment doesn't necessarily change, but if it's a heat stroke, we may possibly fly them out. But most of our stuff will go to Sampson Regional unless it's strokes, STEMIs, traumatic injuries, like significant traumatic injuries, and stuff like that. So, and we will utilize a helicopter. But we don't base our treatment on proximity to the hospital. So we're actively treating our patients like in the field. And then we'll get them to like a specialty resource center, like whichever one fits that particular patient.
The level of training, I recall when the EMTIs moved into the community, then the next level of training, of course, was paramedics. And then there's levels of paramedics of which you hold one of the highest standards in that. And that level was often referred to as, quote, ditch doctors, because the reality was you had the credentials to not only give medication and to do certain procedures, but you had that expertise to do it, which brought on part of that advent of the helicopter pads throughout the county. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back. I want to kind of pick up on that, and then I'm going to switch back to Jamaal for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about a team of folks that knows what happens in the summer of 2025, and maybe it'll help you prevent some safety issues.
Welcome to Cork and Brew Roseboro, where you can enjoy your favorite coffee, fraps, smoothies, bakery items, sandwiches, and select beer and wines while reconnecting with friends and family. Sit down and enjoy the experience. Come on by and give us a try.
This year, when you get together with friends, we hope you have a great time. Just remember to drink responsibly and know your limits.
Let me have your keys.
And always have a safe way home. Enjoy responsibly and always plan ahead.
At the Reedy Mark, we take pride in a unique, distinguished customer experience. We specialize in handcrafted cocktails, allocated bourbons, as well as gourmet signature food items exclusive to our menu at the Reedy Mark in Roseboro.
Looking for training that leads to a high-demand, high-paying career? Bladen Community College can help you get there. Enroll in our welding program and gain the skills and expertise needed to excel in the industry and secure a successful future. Explore our HVAC program, where you will learn to install and service energy-efficient systems to keep homes and businesses comfortable year-round. Learn more at bladencc.edu or give us a call to get started today.
The average American household has 17 devices connected to the internet. With more and more devices able to get online, you may need to increase your internet speed. Call Star Communications today and let us help you select the package that's right for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The name of the show is We Should Know. I'm J.W. Simmons, your host. We're talking today about 2025 summer, those hot months, those things that and times that we don't need to get out. And we're trying to discuss things that can prevent us from doing things that might hurt us. And we're talking with people that have faced this year after year. And we're, of course, one of the people that I introduced first a while ago is Jamaal Faison, who's the animal control officer here in the city of Clinton, and Gabriela Tew, who is the number one paramedic, in my opinion, because she's basically got everything on her shoulders over there. And then Anthony Davis, who is Director of Public Safety for the city of Clinton. Gabby, I want to go back to you. Mm-hmm. When we went to break, we were talking a bit about the response times, the kind of care that a person needs. A lot of that happens if it's a heat stroke, mm-hmm. or if it's somebody that's been in an unfortunately tragic accident with a motorcycle or a bicycle. Your folks roll up on the scene and you start that process of making that decision about what kind of care mm-hmm. they need. Help us understand if somebody's in that position, or if maybe they're sitting in traffic waiting mm-hmm. for you to do your process there, and they get agitated and go, I got to get to the grocery store. Tell us a little bit about that so they can understand what you go through.
So our actual assessment begins at time of dispatch. So we're reading, our CAD notes, and if it sounds like it's something significant, say like an MVA, like a high mechanism vehicle rollover, we'll go ahead and get a helicopter on standby, if weather dependent. Because if it's inclement weather, we'll have to drive them to whichever hospital's closest to the scene. And then when we get on scene, we're making our general impression, like, is this something I need to take to a trauma center? And that would be like femur fracture, significant bleeding, traumatic brain injuries. So we're like formulating these plans in our brain, from the time our wheels are rolling. I mean, it's a quick process, but extrication time, could prolong our scene times. Like if it took them 35 minutes to get somebody out of the vehicle, I just ask people to be patient because we're trying to do what's best for that patient in that emergent situation at the time. It could be life or death situation. Mm-hmm. So just be patient. I know it's, a hindrance sometime, like if somebody has to be at work, but we're mm-hmm. trying to save somebody's life. So, it could be you in that position, just be patient.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is, what would you want folks to know if they happen to pull up and they're mm-hmm. the first or second car mm-hmm. and there's either a vehicle there or a motorcycle there and there's somebody laying beside the road? What should they, obviously call 911. Yeah. You got a traffic accident. But what should they do in that interim time until professionals get there, either a law enforcement officer or a paramedic? Is there something they can do, or should they back away and not do anything? And that's a big issue I've noticed in the media reports just recently. Mm-hmm. Folks come up and there's a car on fire and somebody jumps out and puts the fire out. What's the precautions and what's the things you recommend?
So it's situation dependent. So if the car is on fire, you may have to move the patient. But if it's something where there's not a vehicle fire, you moving that patient, from the scene or, out of the car could, compromise their spinal, mm-hmm. Column. And, leave them in place. Don't move them unless it's a dangerous situation, and provide as much detail as possible. Is there one patient? Is there three? Or mm-hmm. is there seven?
Right.
Like that's stuff we need to know so we know how many units to dispatch. Are they, walking out of the vehicle? Because that's pertinent information for us. So we know, they're able to walk, they're out of the vehicle, it's not emergent at the time. Mm-hmm. Is there somebody unconscious? Is there significant bleeding? Is there massive damage to the vehicle? Things mm-hmm. like that. How many vehicles? Like as much detail as possible. And dispatch will kind of walk you through the whole situation. And if they ask you to stay on the phone, just be patient and not hang up. Because we get a lot of people that hang up, on dispatchers when they're trying to get more information from them. So,
Anthony, one of the things I don't think folks maybe totally understand is all those emergency calls for the city and the county go through the Emergency Operations Center here in the county. And those folks are very well trained in handling those calls to get you that information you need on the scene, as well as if it's something going on that you need to be involved in.
Yeah, those are definitely our first line public safety officials. We rely heavily on the information they receive and what they give out over the radio. And like she said, all that stuff formulates from the time it's dispatched, whether it's a police, fire, EMS call, it begins at the dispatch level. So we certainly appreciate what they do.
And I think we've all heard the, comment, why is this communication person asking me these questions? And the reality is there's a process. It's like protocols. They have protocols just as each one of you folks have protocols that you are expected to follow, because it's proven scientifically following those protocols gives people better care at the end of the result of the situation. Is that a true statement, or I'm just reading the wrong stuff?
Definitely.
Well, in a severe emergency, like she said, time's of essence sometimes. That extra minute and a half, 2 minutes may be life and death situation. So
especially during cardiac arrest.
If we can get that information and get what we need there, then absolutely, it's very paramount that you get that information.
And it could be life or death for them, or it could be life or death for you if the information that they don't give you or they don't receive is correct, because you can go into somewhere blind, and you never know what you're going into, especially somebody.
So it's not a good idea to, if somebody calls, to say to that communication person they're talking to, look, just get a car out here. No. That's not a good thing. You need to give them as much information, because 9 times out of 10, and help me here if I'm going down the wrong path, but 9 times out of 10, they've already beeped and, said, look, we got an issue going on, so-and-so, and there may be vehicles rolling at that time. They're doing follow-up information. So please give them that information.
Because it's a difference whether we're going routine traffic or emergency traffic. Because it's like, my mom's sick. What's going on? Like, is she unconscious? Is she, having shortness of breath? Like, just different details will, differentiate if it's an alpha response or a delta response. So they should stay on the phone, give more details, because we could get there quicker if it's truly an emergent situation.
The critical juncture here for each one of you is at what, and this goes whether Jamaal, if it's an animal bite or whether it's a traffic, whether it's a fire or whatever it may be. The critical thing for folks to understand is at what time and how quick, and should they, some people, maybe say, well, I'm not sure should I even call 911? For example, a dog bite situation, or an animal, whether it's a dog or a cat or whatever it may be, has engaged with a human being. Is that a 911 call, or is that something they need to put a cloth on and go to the ER? Help us understand that world, because not everybody has been, bitten by an animal. So when that happens, the first thing is, oh my God. And I tell you, the word is rabies, always.
Always. It's always rabies.
Yeah.
Well, that always goes back to information. So we also have a non-emergency line. But if it's a straight true emergency, if the dog is still on scene, someone's bleeding out or something like that, I highly recommend 911, because you want to get the fastest response time. I always ask communications, is the dog still on scene? There's been several times where the dog's still on scene, or nobody can't give a description of the dog, or so it's information is key on every single call.
And I think the other thing, Jamaal, that just strikes me too, is that animals, it's not always about a cat or a dog. It could be, let's face it, it could be a wild animal of some kind that has roamed into the landscape to have a nice meal.
Yes.
Not necessarily a human meal, but, trash cans and so forth. Yes. And if that happens, then you might need to engage a number of services.
That is true. That is true. We've dealt with, my wildest animal so far has been an alligator. And that was in the southern part of the county.
Clinton.
That was, what part of town is Union in? Harold. So it was Harold's. So it was kind of like after, we've had several hurricanes.
Yeah.
people, they may say, well, alligators don't live here. You never know what lives here with all the floods and the flood water and everything. So yeah, we've had alligators wandering into a lady's yard and try to eat her dog. So you never know what you're
and bears as well.
Bear, yeah, that's become common now.
Anthony, you don't really want me to talk much about the bears. That's kind of please let's don't talk about that. But the reality is they're part of our landscape now. I mean, all of us can probably sit here and say we've got camera footage, especially with deer hunters, that you know, with bear, and then we're talking in populated areas in Sampson County. So folks need to understand that. And if you're out, you know, on your bike riding or whatever, this is not something you want to stop and play with the cubs with.
I believe we do need to talk about the bears. We had one a couple of days ago come through the city of Clinton, right there on College Street, and just like I said, educating the public that, you know, they're just passing through. They come out of hibernation for the winter, looking food. You know, people put out scraps for their animals and, you know, trash cans, that type of thing. So secure that stuff, and they're going to head back on into their landscape, but they're just passing through town. Not to corner them, not to try to approach them. Just let them walk freely, and they'll leave.
Don't pet them.
Yeah, don't pet them.
In North, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
North Carolina is home of the biggest bear population here in eastern North Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is. We have the biggest bear population. We have the biggest bear recorded in North Carolina. Black bear.
Wow. Listen, when we come back from this break, you know where I'm going. Anthony's reading my mind here. You know where I'm going. I'm going to segue back to Gabby and say, if that call comes in and it is a large animal and it's furry, and it's a bite, and they need EMS, how do you respond if you find out the bear is still on the scene? What does that mean? Let's talk about that when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We're talking about critical issues that you may and hopefully won't be facing in the summer of 2025, but stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
At Fisher's, it's not just about fashion. It's about exceptional service. Experience top-notch customer care and find your perfect look. Visit Fisher's today and feel the difference. Looking to refresh your home? At Clinton Appliance and Furniture, we've got everything you need to create the perfect space. We're here to help make your house a home with stylish furniture, appliances, flooring, design services, delivery, and repair. Visit ClintonAppliance.com to explore our selection, or visit us at 401 Northeast Boulevard in Clinton. Shop local. Shop smart. Shop Clinton Appliance and Furniture.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The name of the show is We Should Know. J.W. Simmons here, your host, coming to you on Star Communications TV, Channel 16, simulcast on WCLN Radio. We're talking about issues that you may face in 2025, hopefully not, but you could face in 2025 as it relates to safety in the summer of 2025. With us today is Jamaal Faison. And Jamaal, you are, well, starting this next segment, you're the bear expert. So, animal control officer, City of Clinton. Of course, Gabby Tew. And Gabby, you head up I'm going to say the knowledge regime for the county for paramedics. And Anthony Davis is in charge of public safety, which is a big umbrella, Anthony, for the City of Clinton. So as we went to break, we were talking about that bear kind of thing. And on break, we talked about the fact that this is, you could say, Jamaal, it's bear country. So, I mean, they're out there. You get the call or the emergency response department that answers that call. Mm-hmm. And it's a human being that's been, they're bleeding and it was a bear. Somebody says it's a bear. You get that on your radio. Your folks get that. Tell us what goes through your mind and how they are trained to respond to that call.
So dispatch will, notify us that scene is not safe, that the bear is still on scene, and we'll stage until animal control can get there because, we want to keep our providers safe because if they're injured, how are they, going to take care of that patient? So we're just going to be on standby until the scene can be safe is pretty much how we respond to calls like that, or even like a shooter or anything like that because we want them to be safe.
So Anthony, when you're looking at it from your role as oversight of law enforcement, is that something that likely, for example, if Jamaal is not there and there's not another animal control officer to respond, what happens?
So in that aspect, again, going back to the information that the dispatcher gets, we may not have an animal control officer that's on duty. Obviously, we do have a mutual aid agreement with the county. So if Jamaal isn't here, then a county unit can respond from the county animal control unit to take care of that call. But you do have to run those scenarios through your head because animal control may not be here. So what do you do if they're not? It may be an officer having to go up there and trying to secure the scene before the paramedics or firefighters can go into the scene safely.
But help will be on the way. Oh, yeah. One aspect of the
as soon as the scene's safe, we're going in.
Yeah, and I think that would be probably the same thing that would be said for the county as well, and probably for folks listening or watching in Bladen or Pender or Duplin, this show. It's pretty much every county has that similar structure.
Right.
So Jamaal, when I want to circle back to you on this because this is getting straight into the animal stuff. Are you kind of Do you see a lot of issues or concerns we should have with what I would call non-domesticated animals, to include not only bear, but other animals that folks may think that's out there and might not? But what do we do? And I think that what I'm getting to here is this whole thing of the idea of rabid. I've had folks to say, well, they got bit and it was like a small animal that looked like they wanted to be petted, and that's not a good idea, is it?
It's definitely not a good idea. The majority of the time when someone is bitten by an animal, it's mostly when they provoke it. So especially wild animals.
Yeah.
So you see a deer or you see a coyote. Now on the level, you'll have bear sighting, you have coyote sighting. So that's number two. So a lot of people, they may come across that. Hey, I want to pet it. It looks cute, but it's not. So you want to steer clear of any wild animals. Keep your kids away from them. The main thing you do not want to do is feed that animal. So yeah, we run into a lot of that. So you just want to steer clear. Don't feed. Just let nature take its course the majority of the time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that the Wildlife Commission's got a list of stuff that you don't engage with, and you don't do that. But the part, Gabby, that strikes me is oftentimes with this rabies thing, some of these animals that are wild will literally come up to you, and a child or something may be out there and think, well, look at that pretty furry whatever critter it is, and think it's some, they think they're in Disneyland or something. And how critical is it that you need to stay away from that animal?
It's pretty critical because not only do you have to worry about rabies, but infection. Right. And infection is like a big part of it because if you don't get treatment, then it gets infected. You can get septic. You can develop MRSA, any of those things. So you want to get either urgent care treatment, ER treatment, depending on the severity. So it is very critical to like stay away from wild animals because you never know what type of diseases they're carrying or anything. So,
Anthony, before we switch from animals here, I want to just kind of touch here. There's this kind of thought that, well, if I live inside the city, I don't have to worry about too much about wild animals. But, you know, Gabby, you cover the whole county. So the question would be, does it really matter? I mean, are we all faced with it?
No, I don't think it matters. And I think, you know, progressively as we move forward with our cities getting larger and more developments happening, you know, we're taking away the landscape of where these animals live. So, you know, where do you expect them to go? So I think as that progresses, we're going to have more encounters and we're going to certainly see that in the future as we develop these areas.
Jamaal, it strikes me that one of the things here, and I don't want to just create non-needed phone calls for emergency communications, but if you're in doubt, the best thing to do is call, you know, and as you said, if you want to call a non-emergency number, but if there's at least doubt that somebody may be injured, 911 that's what that number's for. Am I correct on that? I mean, I think there's sometimes people are a little bit hesitant because obviously now we've got the ability to kind of see where the call's coming from for the most part and that kind of thing. And so they're a little bit hesitant, but you might not be engaged in it. But if you're watching it and maybe it's a neighbor's house or something, and that call needs to go in, person should have the responsibility and feel that they should do that. And I don't want to play that out here, but I'm just saying I don't want people to misunderstand what we're talking about in the sense and hesitate when that 3 or 4 minute time span, Gabby, could mean a lot for your people.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, during any incident, I would say if you feel like it's an emergency, you always call 911. Don't second think it. Just do it. You're not going to get in trouble for it. But yeah, if you're ever in doubt, just simply dial 911.
We're going to steer away from animals. I got another series of thoughts here I want to kind of get going. But the other part of that is the rabies part. You may not actually need that dreaded rabies shot depending on whether it's a domesticated animal, as you said, Jamaal, if it's still on site or not. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just situation dependent. Because if it's like, you know, one of your pets or something, you know, they can be tested. Do they have rabies or not? And then you don't have to get the rabies vaccine. You might have to get a tetanus shot or something like that. But yeah, because the rabies vaccines are painful.
Tough.
Because that gets pretty...
They're tough.
Yeah, pretty significant when you talk about it, which then gets back to the prevention piece. Make sure if you have domesticated animals that they have been
vaccinated,
tested and vaccinated.
Absolutely, yes. And it's a small price to pay. Okay, so let's look at another part of always part of the summer landscape, and that's water and children. And for the most part, in today's world, it's water and young adults, older adults as well, senior people, the caution of being around water. And I grew up in an era, and some of the folks listening will probably say, yeah, and they'll be shaking their heads. Yeah, I grew up in an era you could go jump in the river and swim and you could get out. Not only not advisable, but chemically and safety, definitely not advisable in this decade.
Well, you could get on a snake.
Absolutely. So then you get into snake bites and other things. Tell us what people should be thinking about as they prepare for that picnic, or if they prepare with just someone get out and we're going to have 10 or 12 hours, just going to have a bike ride. I'm going to start with you.
I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play, like, you know, make sure you apply sunscreen because you can get, you know, skin damage from, you know, sun exposure. You know, always supervise your children. You know, even though they can swim, you know, they still need supervision. And that's providing swim lessons to your child. You know, make sure they're wearing life jackets if you're on a boat or even in, you know, a pool, you know, especially for smaller children. And it's, you know, if you notice them, you know, any signs of drowning, you know, always, you know, be vigilant, you know, with your children. Don't just leave them. And then the elderly population, it's like, you know, stay hydrated. Elderly and children are those two like age groups we kind of look out for during the summer. because they can be, volume depleted, from sweating, and then have electrolyte imbalances and all this other stuff. So it might exacerbate some of their health symptoms. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a lot of things. Like when you're preparing, to go out, make sure you have water. I recommend Pedialyte. Gatorade's kind of sugary, but Pedialyte has that sodium, electrolytes in it. They don't taste the greatest, but it's a good volume replacement because water doesn't have salt or any of those other things that you're losing. Pedialyte does. And just have those things available, so you don't get dehydrated because it can sneak up on you. Like, because you're out there having fun, sweating, you're not aware, of what, how much fluid you've lost, especially if you're drinking alcohol, because you should be, per 8 ounces of alcohol, you need to replace it with water or some type of volume because you can get extremely dehydrated because alcohol is a diuretic. So, and then it's just, be safe is the main thing.
The big thing for me is when we come back from break, we're going to be coming on the last part of the show. I just want to make sure that for each one of you, that we hit that one thing that you're now thinking about. When it started getting up in the 90s and the humidity was extremely high and the temperature may be 98, I want you to kind of just think about that for a moment. Not only as it relates to the citizenry, but as it relates to training, Gabby, what do you train your people to do? Anthony, when you look at the totality of the things you're looking at here, firefighters and other situations, what strikes you? Jamaal, when you're thinking about pets and you're thinking about folks as they relate to that. Let's talk about that when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about 2025 summer safety when the heat's high and what happens. We'll be back in a moment.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
We find in life that some things just go together. Like peanut butter and jelly, cheese and crackers, steak and potatoes, and of course, milk and cookies. But the bottle and the throttle are never a good combination. Be smart. Be safe. Be responsible. Don't drink and drive.
How can your friend save you money? It's easy. Refer a relative, coworker, neighbor, or friend to Star Communications. Friend signs up for high-speed internet service. Friend's new account is confirmed. Friend gives your name to our service representative as the one who referred them to Star. You receive a $30 internet credit. It's just that simple. And even better, receive a $30 internet credit for every referral that results in a new confirmed account. High-speed internet from Star Communications. Refer a friend.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming up on the last part of the show today. I want to remind you can reach us by simply emailing us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Or you can just drop us a card, Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Always like hearing from you, and particularly as many folks do, will see me at various locations and various events or whatever and stop and tell me what you thought about a show, or give us some suggestions. If there's something that you would like to know more about, learn more about, understand better, you will get the folks that do it, that understand it, that are in charge of it, and they'll be sitting in these chairs as we have done today. We have Jamaal Faison with us. Jamaal, you handle, as animal control officers, a lot of things called animals. And we could get into that as a whole nother conversation.
Yes, sure.
And, Gabby, I think when I look at you, it's like a lot of things, it's currents going on, technology's changing, budgets with the county, but you look at and handle oversight for emergency response as it relates to paramedics for the entire county, which is a huge, huge task. And of course, Anthony Davis, you've been on a number of times way back when you were just police chief, but now Director of Public Safety for the City of Clinton. Awesome responsibility as well. As we talked about on break, off air, I want to make sure I hit those key bullets that is not in my research, but in the reality world that you operate in on a daily basis that you want folks just to understand. And Gabby, I'll start with you as the training person and oversight person with paramedics here in the county. What does folks need to understand, particularly summer 2025? Is there a false sense of expectation? Do you get more? Are you more concerned about response times? What are those things folks need to know?
Try to be patient, because we may only have one truck available in the county, and you're living in Clinton and you're kind of like, well, why ain't they here yet? Probably that one truck that we have available is responding from Plainview or something like that. So you may have an extended, on scene or from dispatch to scene time. And then with heat emergencies, we might be on scene for a while with you, because that's not a load and go situation unless it's like a heat stroke. Because we can do submersion techniques, where we put you in an ice bath for 20 minutes and then come back, reassess you, try to get your temp down as soon as possible, especially on a football field or something, where they have the submersion tanks. So we might be there a few minutes, trying to, treat that person on scene, because the more their body temps are raised, the more, tissue damage to the brain. So we're trying to quickly, cool that person down. It's just all types of stuff. We're actually treating people in the field. And then people are kind of like, well, why ain't they loading them in the ambulance and going? Because we used to do that. It used to be load and go. But now we're actively treating people in the field, just like they would at, the ER.
One of the things we've talked about in the past as it relates to summer is something you just alluded to, which is that whole area of agriculture related heat summer accidents, because you've got more people in the field, whether it's sweet potato field, whether it's housing tobacco. I think we're still number 2 exporter in the country with crop of tobacco. And it's you talk about hot days, you talk about multiple people, and then you get into the language barrier, which is a whole nother dynamic. It's got to be at times I guess just a unbelievable set of events happening before your eyes, and you got to feel sometimes overwhelmed.
It can be, especially when you can't actively communicate with your patient.
Yeah.
So it's good, for that crew to have, maybe an interpreter on scene, or have ice available for us with anybody. If you're suspecting, a heat emergency, try to find some ice for us, because we're just going to, take a lift or something and just dump ice on top of that person to cool them down fast as possible. So if that crew chief or whatever has, a cooler of ice, have it, ready for us, so we can go ahead and actively cool that patient, because we have ice packs and other stuff, but there ain't nothing like, a cooler of ice just, dumped on top of the patient, because we're kind of making a makeshift submersion tank, for that patient.
And don't wait till it's too late.
No, if you've tried, if it hadn't got to the heat stroke realm yet, because that more is unconsciousness, altered mental status, stuff you can obviously tell. But you get to the heat stress portion, you've got headaches, dizziness, profuse sweating, nausea, vomiting, any of those things, and you try to rehydrate. Because sometimes you can rehydrate enough for the symptoms to relieve. But if it don't get any better after 30 minutes, make sure you call us.
Okay. Jamaal, I'm going to switch to you. And I was just sitting here thinking about posing this question in such a way as basically what to pat on the head and what not to pat on the head. That may be a good way to open.
Right. For the summertime for me, what I want people to know and understand is don't just think your pet is okay in the summertime. If it's outside, I try to tell people all the time, put yourself in your pet's shoes. Because a lot of time in the summer, you know, I got him outside on a chain, or he's under a tree, or most of the time people have their pets just out in the corner of the yard. They're like, well, the sun's not that hot, or they have a igloo to be in, but no top. That igloo is a microwave.
Yep.
So just an igloo, in our ordinance, it has to be 4 sides and a bottom and a shelter. Doesn't really specify what that shelter is, but you just need to use your best judgment. And the chain or whatever you tether your dog with matters, because that tether has to be 1/10 of that dog's body weight. So if your dog weighs 50 pounds, your chain shouldn't weigh no more than 5. So you need to be really vigilant and observant of what you do for your animal in the summertime.
And there is I think it's called a leash law in the city, but not in the county.
It's definitely in the county. It is in the county.
But there's not one in the county. There is a leash law in the county?
There is a leash law in the county. It's for the whole entire county.
Really? So a person that has an animal needs to either have them under control or
under control, in your yard, in a fence, electric collar. It needs to be tethered at all times, or under your control at all times.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's a lot of, I would suspect that may be a lot of the responses you go to that maybe somebody just didn't realize that.
Definitely. And I try to educate on every stop, because a lot of people, you know, you just don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. But at the same time, you need to use that common sense to, you know, if I don't want to have a 100-pound dog running around, because, you know, you'll get people, they'll say, well, my dog don't bite. It might not bite you. Exactly. It's going to bite somebody.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. Don't make the assumption if you're the owner, and I've had I can go down the list and think of them, some rather large dogs in my life. I've always liked large dogs. And I'd always had that assumption, hey, you know, it's a big old pooch. I'd wrestle with them and just, you know, when I was a lot younger, obviously. But that's not the case. And that dog could easily, I mean, we're talking deadly. So it's a good point. We got a lot. I mean, we could talk a lot just on that issue. I want to kind of segue over to you, Anthony, kind of close things out. From your perch now, you see a lot of things. What concerns you the most at summer? We got about 2 minutes.
So in the summertime, we see like our calls increase, especially with the elderly population as it relates to heat exposures and that type of thing, even unwitnessed deaths, unfortunately. So I like to call it neighbors looking at their neighbors.
Yes.
So if you hadn't seen your neighbor in a while, when they're, you know, the older population or they're across town, you haven't talked to them, please call, let us do some welfare checks to make sure they're okay, see if they need any help. We do a lot of welfare checks in the summertime. We expect that to go up as we start getting in the high 90s degree wise. So please call, check on your neighbors, and if you need us, we'll go around and check for you.
And for the county, I think as well.
Yeah, we go to those as well in case it ends up being a medical emergency. Because it could be, well, I haven't seen them in a week, come out their house and they're on the floor, you know, hadn't moved in 3 days. So it would be a medical emergency.
And I think we touched on the whole water thing, especially with little children. We see constantly, seems like too many times, obviously, 2 and 3 year olds near a lake, and all of a sudden they're gone. And the parents, I can't imagine what a horrific experience that is. But oftentimes the response is, well, I just took my eyes off of them a minute. You can't do that. You can't do that. So I definitely want to thank all of you for being here. And Jamaal, I want to thank you for being here. Also, I want to mention, if it's okay, I want to just mention, you have a great side job you do other than police officer.
Yes, sir.
If you need something taken care of as far as vehicle or otherwise, call Jamaal Faison, and you got a great reputation going, man. And so we want to thank you for all the things you do in the community. Each one of you, keep in mind, at any time, as you can tell, this show is open for information and education, trying to keep people informed. And ultimately, Anthony, as you know, you've been on a number of times, it's about saving lives. It's about that intervention. Gabby, please keep doing what you're doing, and good luck with that graduate program. I think just kind of amazed and I feel blessed that we've got people willing to do what you're doing, and all your colleagues in the county as well. So to each one of you, as we go forward in the summer, again, if you need to come back with something, let's do that. Let's let folks know what the needs are to try to keep them safe. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today, and take just a moment here before we go to close to let you know again that this show is brought to you by Star Communications TV, and we air on Channel 16 on Tuesdays at 2:30. Also at Thursday at 7 p.m. a replay for this show on Channel 16. It's simulcast on WCLN Radio out of Clinton at 2:30 on Tuesday. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.